This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Alright, hi everyone. Today we have me and some cool pens that, as you can see, have some very cool, weird, bubbly oil stuff in them. I think in the past I've shown that I like pens that are fun to play with when you're not drawing with them or when you need a moment to think. Liquid Motion Bubbler Pen Set. And thank you to Emily on Instagram for sending me a link to this and saying I should try them out. As you might guess, they're just pretty much basically normal ballpoint pens in here. You twist them, they come out. The kind of scary thing is that there's almost no ink. You can see there's only like 1 inch of ink on the inside. So like the actual pen part, it just took like a normal ballpoint pen, snipped 75% off, just put it in there, and then most of it is a toy. But the toy part is very cool. The green one is a little bit iffy in the sense that sometimes it makes kind of faint lines. But as I drew with all 3 of these, red, green, blue, it's kind of nice to have a variety of lines, like some bold, some fainter, as you combine them all. It's not bad. So at first it was frustrating, and then you just kind of get into the swing of it. Okay. Also, I want to show you these things. From Beneath. Now I'm going to explain to you the story as I draw of where I got these. These are little comics, hand cut and assembled by a guy named Brian, that I met at an iron pour. And I'm going to explain what iron pour is. I've started going to a couple of these, and they're very cool things. This guy is in a band with his friend. The band is called Trailer Witch, and they were just up there playing like metal music, a drummer and a bassist, and I was just really vibing. And then Brian, he recognized me. He watches the channel, and he gave me a couple of his zines, which I just want to show you here. Flip through really quick. There's words on this page, but it's just it's mostly a wordless comic, which I'm on board with that. Even when I add words to my comics, they're almost entirely pointless words. So it's really cool. Check it out. I'll put a link to his Instagram in here. Definitely, you can buy these from him for $5, shipping included. So definitely support an artist like this. He's got some cool stuff going on. Plus, their music was awesome. So, a lot of artists have multiple ways of expressing themselves. So let's draw with these pens and see what we can do. If I don't get too hypnotized by watching the oil droplets come and go. All right, let's test the red and blue ones out with a little sponsored doodle, because Squarespace is really the best, easiest, quickest, most convenient way to get your own website up and running. Get yourself out there on the internet, not just with the same social media platforms everyone else has, but you can still link up your social media platforms to your Squarespace website. It has all these modules you can automatically link up, sync up, and then when you post on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, it automatically updates your website. Plus, it's just good for discoverability. For example, if people want to Google you, look, you've got your own website. You can have all of the things you want to present on there in a million different media formats, all the different links you want. So go to squarespace.com for a free trial. And then when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/PeterDraws for 10% off your first website or domain. So I want to tell you about the iron pour I went to recently, what that is, how I got these comic books from this guy Brian, and I don't know if I really have more to say about these pens. Basically, they're fun, they're cool. Uh, yeah, I think you get it. They're kind of, it's kind of a gimmick. They're not the best pens to draw with. They're just pens. But you kind of get what you get. But basically, I'm in a metal casting class at school, which is where you make molds and then you pour molten metal into them. And one of the types of metal you can pour in is iron. So you can make cast iron sculptures. So one of the things that we do sometimes is like communities get together and fire up a big furnace and pour a bunch of scrap iron into it, melt it out, like heat it up until it gets hot enough to pour out in molten form, and everyone brings the molds that they've been working on, and just everyone pours, everyone gets their molds poured. But it also turns into a kind of community thing where people that aren't into metal casting come, and there's they do these things called scratch blocks, where we give them a little resin sand block and you can scratch designs into it, and for like $5 or something, you can have your own cast iron art made. And everyone likes gathering around and watching this sort of thing because it really does looks like some Mount Doom Mordor type stuff as the molten iron comes out of the crucible. It's like glowing, bright, flaming red, right? It's very metal. And so it's fun to watch. And even at this last one we went to, it was Halloween themed. So there were like a bunch of arts and crafts for kids. There was a costume competition. And they even poured some of the molten iron into jack-o'-lanterns, which was very entertaining to watch these pumpkins stood up to the molten iron much better than I expected. And the next morning it was very interesting how they looked as well. But anyways, so some of the people from my class went to this thing, but part of this, a key part of this story is that the previous day I had been very intimately and immediately reminded of my own mortality, in the sense that I tried to pick up one of these heavy sand molds and I kind of hurt my back. Now I've hurt my back before, right? But never quite like this. Usually it's just kind of a one-day thing. I kind of hurt my back a little, but hadn't really learned my lesson. So then I tried to pick up something a few minutes later and I kind of just finished it off, right? Then it was over at that point. I'm 32 years old, and I guess back injuries are just like a thing now. Maybe they can happen to anyone, but this was my first one that has caused me issues. I think it's like 2 or 3 weeks later now, and it's still kind of lingering, just very stubbornly. Anyways, so the next day at the iron pour, I still went, but as the thing got underway late into the evening, I found that I couldn't really participate in a way that I wanted to, because there's a lot of it involves lifting things and bending over, and I thought, okay, I'm just gonna maybe kind of take a secondary role, maybe just grab this shovel, and a lot of the times little bits of molten iron splash onto the ground and light the grass on fire, so you can just be a person with with a shovel and kind of sprinkle sand onto the burning grass to put it out. So it's like, I'm just gonna do that. But even just shoveling my first shovel full of sand, I retweaked my back. I'm like, no, I gotta step out. I gotta excuse myself from this, which I really regretted, because I really wanted to participate in it, because it's kind of like a very bonding thing. This everyone working hard together for several hours to keep the furnace going, pour all these molds, and I don't really know how to describe it, but it's really pretty cool. So I stepped out. I found a couple of my classmates that weren't participating. I went and sat with them. And I might have, started pouring myself a couple of these, some gin and pineapple juice drinks that I had brought with me for just such an occasion, maybe. but I was just kind of chilling, relaxing. It was actually a pretty good evening at that point. I was lying on my back on the grass, listening to everything around me, staring up at the sky. There was like some random plumes of smoke going up into the night sky from all the iron and fire and pumpkins being set ablaze. But I was lying there and I realized there was this amazing music being played. And I could feel it in the ground because it was this like metal music, and it was all bass and drums. And I think drum and bass is a totally different type of music, but this is metal music, and I could feel it in the ground. And I was just lying there, just soaking it up. It was a great time. But eventually, I stood up and I went over and I just like stood right next to this little stage where I had it set up. It was just these two guys, and it was just awesome watching them play. Like the drummer was totally into it, just going crazy, having a great time. The bassist was also having a great time, and I loved the way that they like worked together. Like they were always like looking at each other to like making eye contact, seeing if they're on the same page. And then sometimes, like even the bassist would like come over at certain points in a song, and like the drummer would like play the guitar a little bit with his sticks or something, just like fun little things like that. And then a lot of the time at the end of a song, they would like finish and then the crowd would just be totally silent. Like they were all just kind of chilling, watching the iron pour. And I could see how it would be kind of discouraging, but they were just totally taking it in stride. And it was great to watch. But then at the end of it, or at one break in their set, the drummer, I guess he like introduced himself to me or something. He's like, "Hey, are you Peter?" I was like, "Yeah." I had just been like standing there, maybe like 10 feet away from him, just like barely rocking back and forth or something, just feeling the music, right? And anyways, he recognized me. He's like, "Oh yeah, I watch your videos or something." So I was like, "Yeah, I'll come back after you guys finish playing and we'll talk." And then I did, and yeah, I just had like a great talk with him and his bandmate. Follow them. I'll put both of the links to both of their Instagrams on in the description. The bassist is Bobby Snakes, and they're both great to talk to. Cool guys. And I mean, they were telling me about they're used to playing to non-responsive crowds because they're telling me about how even during COVID Bobby has one of these cute little Japanese right side steering wheel vans, and they'd load it up and they'd just go set up in an empty Walmart parking lot and just jam out until they got kicked out or something. So it's just like you could tell they're just doing it because they love doing it. And I don't know, sometimes you just feel a vibe like that. You just got to share it. Anyway, so Brian gave me a couple of his these wordless comic books that I showed you at the beginning, and so I just had to share a story with you. Because despite like I was a little bit discouraged, because I didn't get to participate in the iron pour because my back hurt, but it still ended up being a really good night. I made some connections with people, met Trailer Witch, the band, and so yeah. I don't know. I was about to try to wrap it up with some sort of, and like an Aesop's fable, moral of the story type thing, but there doesn't always have to be one of those. But sometimes, well, I was still about to try to do it. Anyways, that's my story. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. These pens were fun to draw with, despite them being cheap ballpoint pens ultimately. And goodbye. Good night. I love you. Sleep well. Sleep tight. Auf Wiedersehen.